Hey everyone, and welcome to Lawn Theory. Today I'm super excited to have one of my really great friends join me on the podcast. He is a titan of industry, a legend among his peers. He is a semi-professional race car driver. He is a gearhead, and he's just probably the best person you'll ever meet in your entire life. And I'm not underselling him. So, ladies and gentlemen, for my second guest, Nick Carlson. How you doing, buddy?
Good, Stephen. How are you, sir? Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the incredible intro.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I was going to add some more flavor in there, but I decided that's just for us.
Yeah. Thank you. No, I appreciate it. It's an honor. It's super cool to live the life I have now. To have friends like you across the country, and I'm a walking blessing. That is for sure.
Yeah, we're both that, my friend. So I know we were talking a little bit before this, and I've known you for a long time. But a lot of our users, they know of Mulchmate. Many of them have a Mulchmate piece of equipment. But could you tell just kind of your origin story? Where did you grow up? How did you get into your hobbies? And we'll kind of build into what you're doing today.
So you said gearhead. That is probably the biggest underlying thing about me. I'm a very mechanical person. Grew up playing, with Legos as a child, and that was just like I was a Lego freak. Still, kind of. I don't know if I have Legos with me here now; they're at home. But just love building, love creating. Very, very passionate, creative type of person. Can visualize things well before they're ever seen. And so as I was growing up, I got into RC cars, RC planes. Got it like before that it was slot cars. Then I bought my first Mustang at 14 years old, restored it, and had it done by the time I graduated high school. And I still have that car today. It's fully restored. It's probably worth upwards of $100,000. It's one of the most rare Mustangs ever made, which is super cool. And then that kind of also integrates into my racing career. So at 7 years old, 8 years old, I think somewhere around there, I started racing alcohol fueled go karts. Not the little local go karts you see just kind of on the street. I'm talking about professional racing go karts that do like 100 miles an hour. So at that 7 or 8 year old mark, I got into it for the first time. Those karts probably did about 65, something like that, at that age. And there's different levels that you can go up in that same cart, and they just get faster and faster and faster. And then I ended up going through basically all the steps of all these racers. Mostly for everybody that doesn't understand, it's oval tracks paved with asphalt or dirt. And then I got into road course racing, which is right and left hand turns. But to kind of sum it all up, I was a champion in every series I ever ran. I have trophies that are almost as tall as I am, 6 foot. I'm 6'3", and I have trophies that are 6 foot tall. And I've got a whole room full of them. So I wasn't just a racer; I was a winner, and I knew how to get everything I could get out of the race car with very little money. There's a whole other story there to that too. But kind of how I ended up where I am is, I started a landscaping company to fund the racing, right? And so that's why I kind of led off with the racing, because my father couldn't afford to pay for all the race cars. And of course, I was a kid trying to make some money, and started, running this little landscape company. And one day I kind of hit a crossroads, and it was either go full-time racing or, go build this landscape company. And I ended up not going full-time racing because this was in 2008 during the big, recession that we had as a country. And I went ahead and went the business route and grew that company to a multi-million-dollar company. And then one day I had a massive facial injury where I got hit with a wood chipper. And this wood chipper broke my jaw clean off. I've got 10 screws and 2 plates holding the right side of my face together to this day. And of course it heals, but broken nerves and things like that don't heal well. And from that injury, I learned that I had to work smarter, not harder. And being the big statured person that that I am, I was always able to muscle my way through things in life. And that injury truly showed me I was human. Excuse me. And when I realized I was human and I couldn't work like I used to, I had to get smarter. And that's when, the Mulchmate deal came to me, and there's a whole nother story there. So I hope that helps the
Yeah.
quick intro of understanding who I am and why I act the way I act.
Yeah, no, that was great. And so I'm going to backtrack a little bit to when you were 7 or 8 and you were doing go-karts, and then you graduated to dirt and asphalt. Now, when you were racing in those series, what cars or series were you racing in? I'm also, I don't know if you know this, but I'm also from a racing family. So my dad ran sprint cars and stock cars my entire life, so dirt track. And so I'm very familiar with that. But kind of what were you doing? Were you dabbling a little bit of everything, or?
Mainly asphalt oval. It started with WKA, the World Karting Association. That's those alcohol fueled go karts. Ran them all up and down the East Coast. Wasn't great at that. Just I may have won 10 races in those just because I was so big. I mean, in 7th grade I stood at 6'1", so very very tall, very big young man. Graduated high school with 290 pounds. Not a little guy. So at 13, I went to Legends Cars. And Legends Cars, anybody that knows what a Legends car is, they run them on asphalt oval, they run them on dirt, and they run them on road course. I mainly stuck to asphalt for a long time until I kind of hit a wall where I was winning, but there were a couple guys better than me, and there was one common denominator in all those guys that they had come from dirt. And I'm like, okay, well, guess what I'm going to go do? I'm going to go play in the dirt. And so we bought a backup car, bought a backup Legends car. And these Legends cars, they're 165 horsepower, 4-cylinder Yamaha, 11,000 RPM, very short wheelbase, about 1,200 pounds, 1,250 pounds. Car is small, very, very small, but very, very lightning fast. And being you have a short wheelbase and not much weight and a lot of power for that little wheelbase, it was a handful. And anybody that's driven them knows how hard they are to drive. And they're pretty much an open wheel car. There's really no body to them, just kind of tires sticking out of the fenders, right? And I went out and I practiced twice on the dirt at one specific racetrack called Potomac here in Maryland. And so this is really funny. This is where podcasts are great because I get to tell a funny story. So I go out and it's pouring down rain before the race. And we go out there and it's mud. I mean, it's not dirt, it's mud. And the car is literally plowing through the dirt. And I go out there and I'm like, I'm on the radio and I'm telling my old man, I'm like, this is stupid. Why are we doing this? This is dumb. And I'm just complaining. So I go out there and I spin the car out like 6 or 7 times and rip the starter out of the car and do a whole bunch of stuff. Because when you spin a Legends car out, if you don't get the clutch pushed in time, it'll rip the starter clean out of the car. And it's a one-way bearing thing. Again, sorry, gearhead. Anyway, get the starter put back in the car, go back out there, and the whole goal was just not spin out. So I went through a whole practice session, didn't spin, raced the race. I didn't do very well the first 2 races. I think I probably finished second to last. I mean, it was awful. I just didn't understand when the car yaws out and gets sideways and the back wants to pass the front, meaning getting loose. I always wanted to correct it. And the reality of what it was is that I had to give it more throttle, right? And I get off the track, and this is the funny part. My friend Mike Bryant, he's a great guy. Raced with him for over a decade. He had just had a little baby at the time. That baby's now like 18 years old. I can't believe it. And he walks up to me. And this man's 6'5". He's just a massive human. He's a roofer, so he's like rough, and he's just a strong man. Man's man, right? And he grabs his child. I think it's a boy. Grabs the child's bottle and hands it to me. He goes, "Here, you want some milk, you little crybaby?" And I'm like, "Dang, Mike, that's rough." And so I went, raced another race there about a week or 2 later. And then there was a new track I'd never been to called, what was it called? Eastside? No, yeah, it was Eastside Speedway, I think, down in Virginia. It was about 4 hours south of me. Father couldn't help me set the car up. So me and my uncle were setting the car up. This was like a Friday. We set the whole car up. And I got looking at the car. I'm like, why don't we I'm going to switch the tires around, right? I tell you this because this was, you ever have a life-changing event, Stephen, where it's like, it just changed who you are and how you thought?
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. So you can probably right now go right back to that one moment in your life and you went, yep, that was one of those moments that just completely changed who I was. So this is my moment. This is the very first one. I'm 18 years old. I just graduated high school. This is where Nick became Nick. So I go down to this racetrack, and again, it's raining in the morning. We get 5 minutes of practice, 5 minutes. And it's my uncle and my father. My father, of course, shows up the next day, and we pull the car out of the trailer. I get the 5 minutes of practice, and I get out on the track, and it's like a sheet of glass. It is shiny, and I'm like, ain't no way this big old race car is going to stick on this racetrack. And anybody that's raced on dirt knows what that looks like. It's got a lot of grip. So there's this thing in racing where they put pills in a bag, right? And if there's 35 cars that start a race, they'll put 35 pills in the bag, numbered 1 through 35. And you pull a pill, and whatever that number is where you start the race. Okay, this is race number 3 for me on dirt. I'm 18 years old, so I'm not that experienced. I don't have the most funding in the world. I set the car up myself, which who knows what the heck I was doing back then. And I had never been to this racetrack in my life. Well, what number do I pick? I picked number 1. Sit on the pole, and I'm like, oh God, what do I do? So everybody comes up to me like, look, we're going to pass you going in turn 1. You're going to be fine. Just follow us. We'll show you the line. We're going to show you how to race this. And if you can keep up, try to keep up. Well, little they know in the back of my head, I'm like, yeah, you thought. And I go ahead and I take the green flag and I send it down into turn 1, and I'm scooting. And I'm like, all right, I'm clear. The guy that was in second that was on my outside is now behind me going down the backstretch. And I said to myself, I'm either going to bring this thing home in a box or I'm going to bring home a trophy, one or the other. So I am on the rev limiter going down into turn 3, and the car is just screaming all the way down in the corner. And it made it. And I go, oh God, that worked. And I'm pulling away. Now I've got like 2 car lengths on the guy behind me. I'm like, this might work out. So to make a long story short, we raced the whole race. I think it's like 40 laps. We had 2 cautions, and I pulled the entire field by a straightaway on a track I'd never been on, and I hate dirt. Remember, I'm the crybaby with the bottle in my hand, right? Mm-hmm. So we finally get down to like the last 3 or 4 laps, and the guy behind me, his name was Rick Bowman. Rick is running me down somehow. I don't know if I slowed down or he sped up. I don't know. I go into the last corner, the last lap, and he dive bombs me on my inside. And he gets on my inside, and I look down, and I'm like, I'm going to give him a lane. I don't think it's going to stick. And I gave him just enough room. As we come around turn 4, he loops it, spins, and I go on to win the race. And that was one of those moments in my life where I went, I can do anything. I can literally do anything that I set my mind out to do. Don't let the noise bother you, right? All those guys saying, oh, you can follow us into turn 1 and we'll, just see if you can keep up. And so it was funny. What's even funnier about all this is that in that race, I actually could not find victory lane. No idea. Couldn't find it. Never found it. Drove it back to the trailer and went home.
Yep. That's awesome. So but it shows that the power of the self-limiting thought, right? If you think you can't, you won't.
Correct.
But if you think you can, you will.
Correct.
And I think that story is so impactful, specifically for the industry we get to serve, because oftentimes that self-limiting thought process is just every day in the lawn landscape industry, and no one really can see that they can pull away, right? That they can get 2 car lengths and then an entire straightaway ahead of their competition. But it just takes those little moments to do it. So I love that story. That's an amazing story.
Yeah, that was a life changer. I mean, I look back on my racing career and I almost cried, because in the middle of it all, you're so stressed out about winning, and why aren't you able to win more, and why can't you collect more trophies, and why are these guys beating you? And going back to what you saying is serving our industry, because it is our industry, right? It's true, and a lot of these guys don't realize that it takes weeks and months and years to inch ahead, just little by little by little.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I have fully 100% seen, understood, went through is we all need to understand that reacting is not good enough. You have to be proactive, lead by example, push the envelope. And I did that when I was a landscaper, right? I remember I had a management company I worked for, and it was all women that I worked for, and they were very hard on me, very. And they were like, Nick, you've got to get proactive. You got to get ahead of this for us. And I remember the day when I went, all right, I got it. I'm going to stay ahead of you, and I'm going to hit you with so many quotes and ideas and thoughts and, whatever I could do to take the load off of them. And guess what? I landed millions of dollars worth of work with them throughout the years. And it was all simply for the fact they were like, make our lives easier, Nick. And I'm like, got it. They're like, we got the money. Just do your job. I'm like, okay, let's do it.
Yep. That's really good, because I don't think I know, is that in this industry, there's the saying in the military, complacency kills. And in our industry, people get so fixated on just keeping their head above water that they forget to swim. Like, you're in the ocean, your job is to swim, and not just keep your head above water and survive, but how can you thrive? And to your point, no one's going to tell you. No one's going to give you the secret, because you don't. The secret lies within you. You have to get up and figure out how you're going to make a living at what you're doing, and not even just a living, how you're going to become a success at what you're doing. And innovation is going to outpass you. And no matter how many classes you pay to go to, how many podcasts you listen to, it's going to take you and your initiative to change it and solve those ladies' problems.
Yeah. One of the things I'd love to pass on to everybody, the thing that changed my life officially, when you ever had that moment, right, where somebody comes up to you and they're like, wow, dude, seems like you've made it, right? I had that in my landscape company, my last business. And it was when I was at a local gas station. They're called Wawa around here. And they were like, dude, it seems like you just like blew up out of like nowhere. And I'm like, no, it wasn't that. But I understand what they see, right? And everybody asks me, how did I do it? And I can tell you exactly how I did it. It's something I call bandwidth in your mind. And what happened is that we as landscapers think we can take on the world, and we kind of have to take on all the different roles that a landscaper has to take on, and we kind of have to be badasses in order to do it, right? And they and I forget that being a badass isn't the goal. It's delivering an incredible experience for the customer that then will replicate throughout your business, right? And the way I was able to do that was I had to look where I was weak, and I had to hire accordingly to, whether it's a secretary or whether it was a project manager or whatever, and take that responsibility off of me. And then that allowed my mind, instead of my bandwidth being at its max all the time, I was then only using 50% of it, which then allowed the other 50% to then be able to then look around a little bit and go, holy cow, where am I slacking? Where am I losing efficiency? That's where Mulchmate came from. I literally stood on a job and I just listened to my guys, and all they said was, shoveling mulch sucks. And I'm like, got it. Let me figure that out. And it took me a year to figure it out. But that year was the most important year of my life. It was just having the time to pay attention, not just constantly react.
Yeah, I love that bandwidth, because I think that's the most important lesson any business owner, any person striving for success can understand, because it took me a long time to figure it out too. Is like, I thought I had to do everything. That's success. It's me figuring it out and doing it myself. Otherwise, you have imposter syndrome. Like, oh, someone else, I'm going to be seen as I'm weak because I don't know how to do marketing, or I don't know how to do the admin side of the house. But as soon as it clicks and you realize, hey, I'm really not good here, but I can find people that are better than me, so I can focus on what I'm truly gifted at. And in your case is finding the man in the marble, right? How can you solve problems creatively?
Yeah.
And so once you free up your time and your bandwidth that you can focus on that, that's when, and nothing's ever overnight, but like you said, it took you a year to get to your first product.
Yeah.
And actually, that's a fantastic story. Can you tell people that you're standing on the job site, your folks say, hey, shoveling mulch sucks. walk me through then that next year.
Sure. So I like to simplify things, and I do it with math and my daughter, and when I'm teaching them, I do it in everything in my life. And what had happened was I had purchased a Turf Tech bed edger, and it was just meant to just edge beds, and it was the only one in the market at the time that edged beds going forward. And so that took my bed edging from 2 months and a dozen guys down to 2 guys in about a 2 to 3 week window, right? And that experience led me to asking and watching the guys and asking them just simply what sucks, right? And so I remember I was at a job site. It's in a town called Severna Park, not far from where I live. Really, really nice neighborhoods, really nice town, best schools in the state. And I'm standing behind one of my dump trailers. It's full of mulch, and there was 2 guys, Israel and Daniel, standing in the back of this trailer, and I'm watching them just drip with sweat. And I just would stop at jobs and I would just watch them, and I would talk to them and say, what is the worst part of all this? And they'd go, oh, it's shoveling, oh, it's this, oh, it's that. And everybody has their own gauge of what is bad for them. And so collectively, I would just kind of go, okay, I hear the most complaining about this. And I go, okay, well, how do we solve that, right? And I remember that was probably June of 2014. I think it was June of 14. And I had spent 6 months going, well, what about a bark blower, right? What about other products on the market? So the first thing you do is you just go look and see what else is out there to solve the problem you have. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's like you need software, you get a Lawn Buddy, right? That's how that works. You don't need to go make your own software. I, in my case, went out and found some products that were close. Some were really old farm technology. Some were way overpriced. I shouldn't say overpriced, just unaffordable for me, really is what it is. And they didn't fit the void that I had. And I went and looked and I said, well, I don't want a trailer because I don't like tags. I don't like tires. I was trying to get my company to a trailerless company is really what I was trying to do. And it got to be wintertime, and so my bandwidth kind of stretched back out again because I got snow brain, I got salt brain, I got, sidewalk management brain, and I'm not really thinking about it too much. But then January rolls around, and we're in the middle of that storm, right? But then my brain starts to click on. Spring's around the corner. And I'm sitting at dinner one day, and I just purchased one of those, like, you ever seen the salters where you lift the bed up and the salt runs down the back and then it goes up the side and spins and it spread all over the road? It's sand or salt, whatever. I had just purchased one of those that morning. I don't remember the cost of it. It was $25,000 or something. I don't remember. Pick a number. That doesn't matter. But I got to thinking, I'm like, well, what if I just took the spinner off, dropped mulch down to it, and then it augured to the side, fell out of a hole into a wheelbarrow? And I got to thinking about it, and I'm like, that would be brilliant. What if we could do that? That means I can use the same equipment for 2 different things, and I don't have to take it off the truck. I can use it in the winter. I just clean it with some Dawn soap, right? And then I can just put it right into use, in the spring. And then if it snows again, clean the mulch out, put salt in it. This is going to be brilliant. Well, it doesn't work, right? So I got to thinking about it. I'm like, well, how do I get material from the bed of the truck to a wheelbarrow? And the guys kept saying conveyor belt. And I'm like, what do you mean conveyor belt? And so they were like, well, we started kind of piecing the idea together. And we're like, well, if we do a conveyor belt here, we can dump the bed and it can go down to the belt and then it'll go across. Well, the problem with that is that creates what I call an avalanche. You ever drank a soda and you get to the very end of it, have like a big gulp cup, right? And you're trying to get the last of the soda out of it, and all the ice just like hits you in the face. Well, that's what we call avalanching. It's an uncontrolled, item coming at that conveyor belt. And so that doesn't work. No matter how many people try to design something like that, it will not work every single time all day long. So in the Mulchmate, there's this tarping mechanism that fully controls the load coming through the truck. And how that came to be was Brightview, the biggest landscape company in the world, in my area, did not have trucks that dumped. And I thought to myself, well, how the heck am I going to sell to them? That's my number one customer I'm going to go after. Turns out it's my number two customer. Walmart is my number one customer now, the biggest retailer in the world. Go figure. How the heck did I do that? But I said, you ever seen the crank-handled tarps you see in the bed of pickup trucks? They've been around
Yep.
for 30 years. They're like $120 on northerntool.com. They cost nothing. I had seen one of those, bought one, put it on one of my landscape trucks, and the guys loved it. And I said, well, why don't we just electrify this and make it massive? And that's how it all came to be. And it all stemmed from just my guys. Where did they sweat the most? And that was it. And they spent months doing that. Months. Could you imagine shoveling mulch like that for months? I know I don't want to do it.
Yep, it's
yeah. So that's how all that kind of came to be. It's to me, it's very interesting.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting. And I think the other part of the story that I really enjoyed as well, and it kind of gets back to your gearhead side, right? And scraping your knuckles up, is as you were prototyping and fabricating those, where were you going? How were you doing that?
As far as the Mulchmates were concerned?
Yep. When you were going and you were doing Mulchmate 1.
Yeah. So, okay. Understand that when I say I build cars and all that, a lot of times with a car, you can go on the internet. There was a website called like JC Whitney. You could buy parts from. You could buy pre-stamped sheet metal that looked like the car, and basically all you have to do is just drill out the spot welds, and you can re-weld these panels on. You really didn't make the panel. You just made it fit, right? So that was the extent of my knowledge at the time. Or with race cars, it was a tube or it was a flat sheet of metal that got riveted on. It wasn't like some super nice fancy CNC cut lasered part, all this nonsense that I do now. So the first thing was just draw the concept. Draw it, literally drew it on a napkin. I still have the drawings today. They're in my Google Drive. And so I start drawing it out. My wife is 7 months pregnant. I'm up till 2, 3, 4 in the morning for weeks on end. I'm so excited about this idea I have in my head. I'm like, this can't get done fast enough. I mean, I'm a psycho. Once I get lasered in on something, forget it. Nothing's going to get in my way other than lack of money. And even then I could probably find it. So I'm doing the drawings, and a crazy story, crazy. So one of the managers I had just hired for my landscape company, he sees me in my office one day. I'm doodling on a piece of paper trying to figure out this design to this machine, right, Mulchmate. He goes, what is that? I'm like, it's this idea I have. He goes, I have a CAD modeling certificate or whatever. So he'd gone to college and trained how to take a product that's on a drawing and then input it into like SolidWorks and be able to 3D model it and actually take files, send them to companies and have them laser it and bend it and cut it and all that. And I'm like, are you kidding me? He goes, yeah, I literally just did it right before you hired me. It was the last thing I did. I wasn't working for anybody. I was just at school. And I'm like, how are we going to do this? He goes, well, I'll bring in my gaming computer, which I'm not a gamer. I don't game. So I don't have any of that kind of, computers and I don't get along. I don't do computers, but I'll weld you the Empire State Building if you want. That's just who I am. And his name was CJ. And so CJ brought in his computer. We set it up in my dining room. It cleared the whole dining room, and just all the drawings and all the craziness was in that room for a little while. And he helped me design the very first model. So this model, I don't know what a step file is. I don't know what vector files are. I don't know any of this stuff way back then. So the next step is, well, we have to make this, right? So my thought was I was going to take an angle grinder, a drill, and some 2x4s, and I was going to cut it with the angle grinder. I was going to drill the holes of the drill, and I was going to take a 2x4, and I was going to bend the metal that way. Like, that's the extent of where I was at, okay? So I start dreaming up, like, there was a TV show called American Chopper that I watched as a kid for years, and I not idolize those guys, but what they did, they just created. And I love that. Now, I'm sure there's better bike builders in the world, whatever, that's a whole other conversation, but I like to create. And so I just start Googling, like, how do you manufacture a product? How bring it to market? How do you do that? There's no actual road map to do that. We all, you included, we all have to figure out how to do that, right, in our own little way. And so I just start Googling and calling anybody I can think of, and I finally found a place that sold metal. This is where the story gets interesting, so bear with me. I go to this place called Metal Supermarket in Baltimore. It's just north of where I live. And I go up there, and it's the first time I've ever been in like a metal shop where I can buy metal. And I'm like, okay, I think I want the mulchmate made out of aluminum. And so I said, can I go back in your shop? I just want to like touch and feel the metal. That's the kind of person I am. I got to touch it. And I find 1/8-inch aluminum. It's 5052. It's the same exact aluminum I use today in the mulchmate. Crazy that I picked the exact metal. So I buy one sheet, throw it in the bed of my truck, and on my way home, this is where this story gets crazy, is there is a place called the Foundry. And on my way home, I said to my father was with me that day. It was like a Tuesday. I'm like, hey, let's go to Nick's Fish House. It's a restaurant, really nice restaurant. We got some crab cake sandwiches. And on the way there, we saw this big building. It said the Foundry on it and all that. And I don't know why, but it spurred my old man's interest. He was like, what's up with that? So he starts Googling it while we're sitting there. I remember this as vivid as the day is long. I'm like, what are you doing on your phone? He goes, dude, this place has got like welding and CAD modeling and 3D printing and blacksmithing and water jets, CNC machines. And I'm like, that sounds like something we need. So we go there after lunch, and I swear to God, we opened the doors, and I could hear the angels singing. Every single thing I needed to prototype mulchmate is in that building. It was started by the owner of Under Armour. His name is Kevin Plank. Right, I'm wearing one of his shirts right now, and he was investing a lot of money into startups, and this is one of the startups he was invested in. And he just opened this building like 2 months before I walked in that door. And basically, it works like a gym membership. You spend like $100 a month. You get trained up on whatever piece of equipment you need to use. That costs a little bit of money for the training. And from there, you can use it infinitely. If their doors are open, you can use it. Welders, blacksmith, water jet, you name it. So that was a Tuesday we showed up there. By Friday, I had taken those step files from CAD modeling, right, from CJ, showed up there with the metal I just purchased, threw it in the water jet, and I cut the biggest metal in that water jet that the Foundry to that day and to this day had ever cut. And we had cut it there. They did not have the bending capabilities that I needed, but I found that here locally. Took that cut metal, took it to the bender, had them bend it, bring it back to my shop, and I basically built a silver box of sorts that it was just was I able to actually take a napkin drawing, stick it in the computer, and then get it cut, get it bent, and then will the bolts all go in the holes. That's all I was trying to get done. And I have that machine in this building today. And that awesome. Was where it all started. And then from there, it was just a matter of fail faster. That's our motto here, is fail faster. You're not going to be able to avoid those failures unless you just ramrod through them and get them figured out, right? And so we built 4 or 5 prototypes of the entire machine, but like the subcomponents, there's one part I made like 150 different times. It just failed and failed and failed. And I remember I couldn't sleep for weeks trying to figure this part out. And one day I was sitting in the back of a rental car in Florida, taking care of my grandmother, and I just click, that's what we have to do. And I came back here, prototyped it, and it works. And to this day, it is in my machine. It's the heart and soul of my patent. And I have up to I have 12 patents, 12 utility patents to this day in my name.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah. You've told me that story a couple times, just when we're having dinner, when we were at a GIE or Quip. I apologize. I'm gonna be struck down with lightning. I absolutely love that story, and it kind of gets back to your point where, one, it shows bandwidth, that you were able to create bandwidth in your life, so you had the capability to focus on that. But it also shows determination and resilience. And when I think of who is Nick Carlson, like, it's just determination, like sheer will and determination to make it work. Which I've always and will always respect and admire you for having that. Like, just failure isn't an option. We're going to figure it out. I wish more people had that exact mindset. But so now walk me through. So you built the first one. Now close the gap between Mulchmate 1 that I need photos of in your shop all the way to today and everything you make now, because I feel like you've made a solution for almost every major pain point outside of the labor market that the industry has.
You should see what I have coming. Okay, we built the first one. I'm gonna call it the silver one, right? The prototype number 1. So we had, at that point in time, it was, just can we put it together? So my father wanted me to take that machine and make it work, and I had told him, no, this is not the product that I want. This is not sellable. I'm going to go start working on the prototype number 2, which I have in the building as well. And when I started building that was the one that I started to try to run. Mulchmate is a machine that it's a big door basically, that it's an attachment on the back of a truck, and it can swing open and close. So you have access to your truck, you can dump your truck, you can dump your trailer, what have you. The reason I bring that part of it up was I was told by a dozen very highly respected engineers out of Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman that couldn't be done, period. And these guys are like, nope, can't be done. And I literally looked at them and I said, not only will it be done, I'm going to make it a standard feature of my machine. This is going to be just, when you think Mulchmate, you're going to say, that's just how it comes. To make a long story short, and again, really funny story. So I'm at this foundry, right? They call it a maker space. If you want to Google maker space, you'll find things like it, but nothing in the world that I know of was as good as a foundry. Oh, by the way, when I stopped using the foundry, within 3 months, they shut their doors. So think of that timeline, right? I came in 2 months after they opened, and I left about 3 months before they closed. That's God. That's all I can say. That's all I can say. Again, I said I'm a walking blessing. I've got a list of blessings, but I think it's also because I put myself in that situation. Either way, I leave the foundry. It's about 10 o'clock at night. I was there. I closed that place down 10 o'clock every night for, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years, every day. And I remember thinking to myself, how am I going to get this machine to swing after having these conversations with these engineers? And the secret to what I do is I don't actually create anything new, because I think there's really not a whole lot of new left. But what I do is I make a version of. So what I do is I start to think of things that do kind of what I want something to do, right? So if I want to design a door latch, well, I'll go Google door latches, and then I'll take a little design cue here, a little design cue here, and kind of make my own work for what I'm doing, right? That's what I do. So as crazy as it sounds, I Pinterest bank vault doors. And I go, well, bank vault door is huge and heavy, way heavier than a Mulchmate, right? Mulchmate weighs 900 pounds, not that heavy. And you need it to, like a bank vault door, it comes out and then it rotates, right? Well, Mulchmate does the same thing. It needs to come out around and around the side of the truck. And I got to looking at them, and I'm like, well, there's a pin there and a shaft there, and it's doing this, and I have one major rule is everything has to be a single man operation, and it has to have as little maintenance as possible. So like our hinge has no grease, no maintenance on it, and one very small person can do it. My 5-year-old son can close a Mulchmate, right? Like that.
I saw the video of him shutting it.
Right? Isn't that fun? So yes, I help him a little bit because I don't want to get hurt, right? But it's so important to me that I make it as easy as humanly possible. And so I took this Pinterest, this few pictures I had collectively put together, and I basically built this hinge, and I took it to one of the main head engineers from I think he was from Northrop Grumman. There was a TV show actually about engineering, and he actually won the entire show. So dude's brilliant. His name's Corey. He's a great guy. And I brought it to him, and he starts asking me all these questions, and he's got one of these pieces of paper like this, right? And he's starting to ask me. He's like asking me different like weights and, well, what kind of force do you see here? And I'm grasping at straws at this point in time. I barely understand what the heck this man's talking about. Now today I totally understand. But he got right to the bottom of the page, He looks at me and he goes, "How'd you do that?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "This not only will only deflect 1/8 of an inch, but it's 3 times stronger than it needs to be." And I'm like, really interesting. And from there, we've refined it. Of course, we found where his formula wasn't quite right, but that was one of those crazy stories that we developed with Mulchmate and all that. So to kind of bridge the gap between the first prototype and the last one, the hinge was a big one, and the tarp mechanism was monumental. And when I say tarp, the tarp and the augers all work in line together. So for anybody that's listening, it's this is how it works. There's a tarp that lays on the floor of a truck bed. You put your mulch on top of it. There's a roller built in the Mulchmate, and that roller is electrified. Everything that we do is electric, and it rolls the tarp up, right? Like kind of like toilet paper. Imagine going the opposite direction with toilet paper, right? Roll it in. And when it's rolled up, it just introduces all that material to the Mulchmate. It drops it onto a conveyor that's running like crossways across right to left of the vehicle, and it dispenses mulch into a wheelbarrow or rock or sand or dirt in 3 seconds with a press of a button. So if you're listening, if you want to visualize it, that's how you visualize it. So the big problem with the tarp was vibration. This is where it gets tricky. So I can't tell you exactly how I did it, but inside of that tube that rolls the tarp up, there's 141 components that live inside of there that spin. And if you're a racing, family, Stephen, you understand this. That shaft that's inside of there spins at 10,000 RPM. Okay. So here's the trick, though. Have you ever heard of something self-balancing itself?
Self-balancing itself with no outside factors and manipulation? No.
So mine does. So there's a joint that I created where these shafts interlock together. And what it does is if a shaft gets too long, there's basically 2 rules of thumb. If there's more than 2 bearings per shaft, it will create bind. The second rule is if there's too much gap between those bearings, it will create whip, depending on the speed and velocity and deflection of the material. Okay. God, now I sound like an engineer. Jeez. Which, by the way, I'm not.
I won't tell anyone.
So don't tell you. I've never even set foot in the college. So don't even. I'm not that guy. But I do understand things. Anyway, I was able to create this joint to where the motor will spin this shaft at 10,000 RPM. It basically hits a stopping point, and then all the whip that you get in the system, basically that joint allows some deflection, some movement, right? And when it does, it basically vibrates itself to balance back in because one shaft can't move, the other one has full movement. And then when it does, when it exports that power towards the passenger side of the vehicle, it does the same thing in reverse. So as it whips one way, it then has a solid state point, and then it has the complete opposite on the other side. And then the bigger thing that's even more impressive is it's all in this 4-inch piece of pipe, right? That pipe is pulling 15,000 pounds worth of material. So it's seeing a deflection, basically turning itself into like a banana. You can't see it, but it does it. So this shaft not only can't whip, can't vibrate, can't make a bunch of noise, but then it has to basically bow, a live active bow in and amongst everything that it's doing, and it cannot be serviceable. Can you imagine designing something like that?
Yeah, it sounds like a very fun, complex, gray hair inducing process.
Yeah, I got a few in my beard now. I think that's so we get that figured out. We start mounting Mulchmates on like a prototype on trucks, and we start running them. And I am blowing them up left and right. I mean, when I say blowing them up, I mean it's making noise and it's like stand back, right? So we build our own gearboxes here. We design everything in house. The only thing we don't make, but we do have somewhat design implementation of it all, is our electric motors. We spec gears and bearings and speeds and windings and all kinds of stuff. But this one gearbox is very cool to me, and I have it here in the building too. It's about 2.5 inches thick. And you ever seen 3D printing? It's like it's layers, right? Yep. So I took that concept, but I did it with metal. and I did this at the foundry. So basically what I did was I made a gearbox out of 1/8-inch sheets of aluminum, and I'd stack them up. And as I stack them, I could change out different bearings and races and thrust washers and gears and all kinds of different things inside this gearbox, seals, whatever. And as I'd blow them up, I could slide like 2 or 3 sheets out, get a bigger bearing, cut a new sheet, throw the 3 new sheets in, new bearings, and I could remake this gearbox over and over and over again until I got the formula right. And that's the trick to Mulchmate. The number one trick to it that makes it the best in class by far, there's nothing even close, is the formula of speeds between the cross conveyor, the tarp, the augers, and the power. That is the secret sauce of the whole entire thing. And even if I handed you the machine, I bet you to reverse engineer it, you almost couldn't, because some of the secrets are so blatantly in your face you can't even tell they're even there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's awesome. The and the feedback you get from the field is amazing. I mean, you're solving real problems. I mean, all that gray hair inducing stress and manufacturing was worth it, because you're seeing the benefit in the field now.
Oh yeah, I'll give you one of the latest ones I got. There's a guy named Milky. He's out of Pennsylvania, and he'd been on the fence for a couple of years, and he finally pulled the trigger on a Mulchmate, and he delivered it. But we had it delivered, but he said part of the deal was he wanted me to come out and train him. He was only like 2.5 hours away, so I agreed and drove out there and trained him and his team on it. His team goes out. His crew leader is very mechanically savvy, but heavy skeptic of this unit, this Mulchmate, right? He kind of bad-mouthing it when I'm there, really doesn't understand it, right? I get that a lot. I get an email, I don't know, a week or two ago, and he's like, hey, the guy Milky, the owner, is like, hey, funny story. So I sent this guy out, had him get trained up on it because we have free online training, which is another industry first, I think. And the guy went out, they put down 10 yards of mulch in about an hour, and he goes, when are you buying more of these damn things? and we take a lot of skeptics and convert them a lot. The Walmart deal, right? We were talking about Walmart, the biggest retailer in the world, is one of my customers. Not that they buy and sell our product, they buy it and they use it. Walmart is taking over all their grounds maintenance back in-house. It's like a 10-year rollout, and they're starting with Mulchmate.
That's awesome.
Yep.
That's a huge, huge accomplishment. I love hearing those little things too, because I think we talked about it on the phone last week. You had told me that story because you were up there when I called you, and that same day I had talked to a client, and they were saying, and I didn't believe them at first, because it was really, you kind of, when you get a sincere compliment, sometimes you're like, oh yeah, that's not real. But I was talking to this gentleman, and he said, you literally saved my marriage. And I said, what do you mean? And he's like, I'm not arguing with my wife every night about routes and billing. And I said, okay, that's nice to hear. And then his wife got on, and she said, no, it's true. Like, we don't argue. Like, it's cleared it up. We don't have to worry about it. I'm his office manager. This is great. Also, could you squeeze in this new development?
Always.
It was a little bit of a sandwich method, but no, it was sincere and great. And I just loved turning a skeptic or someone who doesn't see the true value in what you're doing, and then they see it in real time, or they hear that feedback from the field and turn it into a great customer. And then That builds until you have Walmart as a customer.
Yeah, and that, I think part of our success has just simply been, I said from day one, there was one thing I was going to do, and it was going to be, I was going to be brutally honest with people. I wasn't going to sugarcoat anything anymore. I was going to give them my all. And recently I had somebody call me eccentric, and I find it hysterical, because the guy, he didn't tell it to me, he told it to a friend of mine. And this gentleman I would put in the same category as you, where you know exactly who I am. Like, it's always the same person. You call me, I answer. I do what I can to help. I'm not perfect. I am human, but I give it my all, right? And this other person he was telling, his name is Will. Will is like, you don't know Nick. He is a genuine dude that's trying really hard to do his best. When it came to business, I think part of the reason we're so successful is that just the brutal honesty with people. And sometimes I don't have an answer, and I don't. I ain't got an answer. And that has really resonated. You're talking about like your client that said to save their marriage and being skeptical of the compliment. So like year 1 or 2, I felt that feeling, and I'm like, am I really changing the industry? Am I really helping people make more money or save marriages? I've heard those things. Now being in it, what was 6 or 7 years now, into doing this, and that's nothing. Like we're infants in all of this, as far as I'm concerned. As far as my company, I believe it now because I've heard it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, and I have so much data that I've collected. And something else along these same lines, you and I had a conversation. I won't go into detail of what you and I have coming and working on together, but the point of it was be vulnerable, because I was vulnerable with you. I trusted you with some information, data that you had asked me privately in a private conversation. And my old me in my landscape company never would have been vulnerable. Never. I would have been like, no, everything's great, everything's perfect, blah, 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 and I would have painted this big, glorious, beautiful picture. And instead, now, today, in this company, when I had a chance to kind of reset myself, I was honest with you, and with no thought of getting help or it somehow or another getting fixed. And you have offered a solution to that, hopefully, that we can work together on to better both of us, right? And again, not saying what we're working on, but what I'm trying to get to is a good trusted circle and being vulnerable with those people. A lot of times you don't realize if it's good people, good men like you and I will jump up and try to help somehow, some way. And you just never know how that will come. So I don't know. That's my viewpoint on it. And it's worked for me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think being vulnerable and being authentic is huge. And you see the opposite of that everywhere, but that's when we can do what I believe we're put on this earth to do, is to help each other, to grow and cultivate real meaningful relationships. And it's what we have. And so I'm excited to continue that and continue cooking on these solutions to each other's problems. I don't know if we can stop our gray hair from popping out, but well, I guess, yes, we can. We can go back to the forge and reopen it and come out with a new cool hair dye. So I know you've got a bunch of other products now too. So you've got Mulchmate, you've got Snowmate. Yep. Talk to me just real quick. What solutions do you have to problems for customers if they're listening?
Okay, so my bread and butter is, of course, the Mulchmate. The cousins to the Mulchmate are something called Truckmate and Truckmate HD. Truckmate is basically a very, very, very stripped down version of Mulchmate for pickup trucks. So municipalities or guys that can't afford these $150,000 trucks now, they're out of control price-wise, or can't even get them, right? You can turn your pickup truck into basically a dump truck or a Mulchmate style truck and move material faster and easier, get jobs done quicker, save that marriage, right? That's for pickup trucks. Truckmate HD is, again, it's more or less a bigger version of Truckmate, meaning it doesn't have augers, it doesn't have this big box in the bag, no tool basket, all these different things that Mulchmate has. It does the very, 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 very basic same version of Mulchmate, but it's been developed for Mason body style trucks, which like up in the Northeast are huge. As a matter of fact, we're finally wrapping up the final designs of it. It's been 2 years of trying to work through its issues, just getting the right formula. Again, I actually kind of paused the release on it, waiting for these parts, but I've been testing for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks now, and I am beyond excited. Like, we're going to kill it in that market. Kind of my business plan here was a tiered down system. Start at the top and kind of work your way down. So Mulchmate's like the big fish, right? Truckmate HD, Truckmate. The Snowmate is a great universal plow for any zero-turn mower in the market. More likely a commercial mower would be best, but guys do put them on like ATVs and things like that. But it's a very universal plow, and it starts at $1,200, and then you can option it all the way up to like a $3,500 plow. Add electric, you could add lights, you can add all kinds of stuff to it. So that's cool. Another great seller we have is our Cartmates. People have towed trailers around mowers for decades. I know the company that we work with, they sell over 10,000 of them a year to just homeowners here and there. I developed the world's first and only articulating zero turning cart that mounts to the front of a mower. And the reason it mounts there is it's easily seen. It's better to maneuver. It doesn't pivot. It is fantastic. There's a whole bunch of other details too. We won't get into all that here. But that's a huge seller for us and a massive needle mover for landscapers. Just an awesome product. We have our Hitchmate series, which is what attaches the cart mates and the snow mate to the mowers. We have our dual pod, tripod light setup. So it's basically an amazing lighting system that will light up to an acre of property. And yes, I said an acre with these lighting setups that you can just mount right to the mower and connect right to the battery. There's no relays and all this crazy stuff. It has a dual phone charger. It's got strobe lights on it to keep you safe. Really nice product. And then one of the latest ones we have, I don't have one on my desk. I wish I had one here with me. It's stupid simple. It's just heated hand warmers. So you strap it to your mower, plug it in, turn it on. It's got 3-way adjustable carbon fiber heated pads that sit on the grips of your mower. It can be a sit down or a stand on, and it just keeps your hands warm. And, I simply just developed it because I was out cutting my grass one night, and I'm like, man, my freaking hands are frozen. I can't feel anything. And so I was like, well, why don't we just make some heated hand grips like the heated steering wheel in my truck?
That's awesome.
Yep.
Solving problems, man.
That's it. Just
Yep.
trying to make life better.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I've got a handful of last questions.
Okay.
This is getting more to the, not lighter side, but I would say a different side of the podcast. So first question is, now that you have all this manufacturing capability, I know you're still a gearhead. I know you're working on a lot of cars. So are you making any aftermarket parts for yourself so you can go further faster?
So I've done a few little prototypes here and there. I made a pulley for my blower. I have a Shelby Super Snake. It's a 800 horsepower Mustang is what it is.
Yeah, super slow, not
yeah,
rare.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because I'm just a gearhead, I wanted it faster. And when you reduce the size of a pulley on a blower, it makes it go faster. I made it. I haven't installed it yet. I've never said this publicly. It's funny. You're a very smart fella. So I really want to start making products for Broncos. I think Bronco is a much better. Well, I shouldn't say that because I'll put my foot in my mouth. I like Broncos better than Jeeps. I'll just say that. I've owned both. I think Broncos are fantastic. They're at their infancy of aftermarket. And yes, there's a lot of people that make aftermarket stuff, but I think I have better mojo and I don't have bean counters holding me back where a lot of these huge corporations, they start to bean count and then the product and the experience you have with said product starts to diminish. And I have the ability to make the most badass thing you could ever make, whether it's control arms or sway bars or body panels. I can have things made across the globe. It doesn't matter where it is. I can have it made. So yes, I want to do that. And actually one other one, not gearhead related, my engineer Jamie is dying to get into the weightlifting equipment manufacturing sector. So yeah, it's on the table. We haven't started anything yet.
Yep, that's fantastic. So now is towards the end of the interview. I turn it over. Do you have a question for me?
I do, and it's going to sound kind of odd, but when did you find out about us? And this is going to sound weird, but I don't know what I do to be honored with having a friendship like ours. Like, I don't understand why you're so good to me and what I ever did to deserve it. What did you see?
That's a great question. Why are we now?
No one ever asked that, but it's true.
Yep, it's true. No, I think so. The way I first heard about you was a customer asked me if I knew about Mulchmate. And then I think it was at one of these trade shows. I know exactly where it was. It was at, I won't say the trade show name, but you and I were both furious. So we met before that and we started to become friends. And then the friendship really was forged through, well, it's been longer than that because we met, I think our first podcast was during the pandemic. So I think
Probably.
we really became friends over shared frustration while we were at a trade show. Um, but I think you're just a lot like me. So I'm honored for you to be a friend just as much as you are for me. And I think you're just authentic, and we both want to communicate the same message in an industry that desperately needs it.
Yeah.
That they one, they can do it, and two, a lot of times they're taken advantage of. And good people do business with good people, and you're good people, my friend. And
Yeah.
so I'll always associate with you and help you and your company because I know you'll do it for us, and we've proven that. And it's anything we do is always upheld with integrity. And so, yeah, you'll be a dear friend of mine till the day I die.
Sounds good. I have one more question for you. What's your
Yep.
why? Why do you do what you do?
That's a great question. A mentor of mine, his name's Rick Ralston, he put me on the spot with that question a couple months ago. And I normally would always have a generic response, right? Because as an entrepreneur, you're conditioned to like, how do you communicate your why? And it's to serve an industry that's underserved and bring them technology solutions to further their business so they can scale faster. But it's not my why. Well, that is what we do through software. But my why started with very similar to you. It was, I saw a problem. So the first iteration of Lawn Buddy was bridging the communication and payments gap because I was frustrated with an experience I had with a landscaper. But the why behind it was seeing hardworking men and women in the field and not having the technology to go faster or to do it in a better way, and seeing them struggle. And we have a slogan. It's I know you've seen it because you're at our trade show booths all the time, but it was software built for big, fat, sweaty thumbs. That's a slogan. But where that came from was I was in the field because I worked with landscaping companies for a year as we were launching the product. And everyone was using their pinkies to run QuickBooks or to run anything because when they get off the mower, right, in the summer, it's the exact opposite problem of what you have when your hands are cold in the winter is their hands are too hot. They get off, they're sweaty, covered in gas and grass. And the heat sensors on their phone can't track their thumb because they're just emitting, look, that thumb. They're just emitting so much heat that they can't use their phone. And so I was like, there are so many small problems that I can change that are going to be so beneficial to the end user because it's built for them. It's kind of like if you were to your Mustang, you're not going to go and slap a Jeep part in it, or try to just get by and maybe swap out you're not going to do an engine swap in one of your cars for something that's slower. Like you don't do that. But in the industry, that's often what they get because it's not built for them. And so that was my why, is helping people. And along the way, if we grow and we're successful, that's great. But if I help one person, then that was enough for me. And then every day there's a new one person. And then there's 2 people, 3 people, and then you're helping hundreds of people every day, thousands of people. And so that's my why. This is just help and be a good human.
I like it. That's all I've been trying to do is help people. So I share that with you very much.
Yep, that's why we get along. We're pretty much the same. And so in closing, my favorite question, and I hope you've prepared for it. I know you said you did, but could you deliver us your best premium dad joke for the audience as we close?
Okay. So there's this one joke that I don't know where I got it, but it's stuck with me forever. And it goes something like this. So there's this lady, and she keeps having these same dreams over and over and over again. So one day she decides she's going to go see a shrink and just ask what's up with these dreams. And so the doctor says, well, what's your dream about? And she goes, well, I keep dreaming about teepees, like Indian teepees. And she explains, the dream and how she keeps sleeping in them. She's around them and all that. And so he gives her some medicine and sends her home. And she comes back a few weeks later and he goes, "How are the dreams?" And she goes, "Great, that dream stopped, but now I keep having dreams about wigwams." And he's like, "Really? Wigwams?" And he gives her some medicine and she goes home. So she comes back, a few weeks later, and he goes, "How are the dreams, about teepees and wigwams?" And she goes, "Well, I'm not just having dreams about one or the other. Now they're both in my dream." And he goes, "Well, I've been thinking about it. I think I've got, I think I understand why you're having them." And she goes, "Why?" He goes, "You're just too tense." It's always tickled me forever.
Well, that's great. That is a good one. I will also use that one, and I'll pay you any royalties I get from it.
But do you have a dad joke?
Do I have a dad joke? Oh, man. So the last guest, he did one that was great that my son keeps repeating over and over again, and I know he's going to do that joke too. But his was, why did the brooms, I don't know. It's going to be horrible. You'll have to watch the first episode to find out what it is, audience. But I'll say this. Why did the bike keep falling asleep?
I have no idea.
It was too tired.
That's good.
So that's right in line with your 2/10 joke.
It is right. It's very similar. Very, very similar.
Yep.
That's great.
So well, thank you, my friend. As always, it's a pleasure to sit down and talk to you. And I know everyone's going to get a lot of information from this. And as we leave, how can the audience get a hold of you?
You can always go to multimateusa.com, and that's where we have all our products showcased. We do a lot of, Instagram posting. You can go find us at Multimate USA or Dawson MFG. Please give us a follow there. And I've also been firing up YouTube a lot more here recently, trying to do a lot more vlogging and kind of behind the scenes, a little more detail. So, share, subscribe to our YouTube channel if you don't mind. And, if there's something you want to see, just DM us, and I'll be more than happy to share everything except for what's inside of my tarp tube.
There you go, dude. Hey, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
All right, Stephen. Thanks, guys.
But before you leave, I have one last thing, and I know I got to leave here in a second.
Okay.
But and maybe we can use this for something else. I have an awesome content opportunity for us.
Okay.
But we need to do a little engineering behind it. So one of my partners works for a very large company in the firearms industry.
Okay.
And I have access to an M60, which is the machine gun from the Vietnam era, called the Pig, an MP7, and a bunch of other stuff. For the M60, I want to mount it to a zero turn or a stand-on, but I need a mounting solution. A cheap, easy mounting solution that we can bolt on, and then you come down here and we'll shoot machine guns from a zero turn and find a mulch mate locally, and we'll do some content off of that.
So if you don't mind, if I could throw my 2 cents in, the second prototype of mulch mate is in my back lot right now. We have to take it out of the building because we just need the space. I want to blow it up. I want to put tannerite in it, and I want to blow it to Kingdom Come. So maybe a hybrid of both. I could ship you the machine. We could figure out some kind of mounting solution for these machine guns, fill the machine up with tannerite, and shoot it.
That would be great.
It's done as far as I'm concerned. You just let me know where and when.
Boom.
I have a very large area I could do it here. It's through one of my customers down south, about an hour and a half south of here. But we could also do it out where you are too. I don't really care.
Yep. I don't know about shipping machine guns that far, but we can figure it out.
Yeah, let me know what you want to do, and I'll just ship a mulch mate and tell your boy to get some tannerite, and we'll blow something up.
Sounds good. All right, man. I got to run, but thank you very much. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Yep. Bye.